Hi, I'm really excited to be having a conversation with Jacob Tucker of Grey Star Ghost. It's this afternoon for me, it's 4 p.m. for me, but it's 9 a.m. For Jacob in Albuquerque, New Mexico. So he's had quite an early start for this interview. So thank you, Jacob, for joining me.
Thank you, Lisa.
Been listening to your music a lot, both of your albums, and you've also got music out through Eldora Britain Records, which we're both part of that community, the Eldora Britain Records community, with Tom Hilton, who runs that, who is a totally amazing guy with such a passion for all forms of music. So you've got two albums out, Silence Found was your first album, and Earthstorm Moves. And two of your songs are on various artists' albums with Eldora Britain Records, Tomorrow and Give Life a Second Look. So people can find you in various places on Bandcamp and everywhere that there's music available to stream, can't they?
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask, first of all, how you connected with Tom and Eldora Britain Records. How did that come about?
Yeah, well, I don't know how Tom finds all the great artists that he finds on his side of things, but I know for me, about a month or so after we released Silence Found, our band decided that we should probably have a band camp. There's all kinds of social media platforms that we were keeping up with, and then getting the digital distribution to all the streaming platforms, is kind of an undertaking, as I'm sure you know. And so after all that, we were kind of going, what else should we do promotionally? And it was our drummer actually that said, we should probably make a band camp, because that's a whole nother avenue of listeners. And so we did that. And it wasn't long after that somehow Tom, through Bandcamp, found us, and he messaged me via Facebook and said he really enjoyed the album and talked about releasing a couple singles from it on the different compilations. And then we went from there. And so, Tom's got a method, I'm sure, to finding all these great independent artists, but I've been super grateful to him and to the Eldora Britain Records community. There's lots of artists that really have a great creative spirit and just tons to offer, and it's been amazing to be connected and exposed to so many, like yourself, of course, Lisa. And then the festival that we did last month was really great to be part of. It was an honor. And, I hope we do more and more things like that. And it's just the community is so supportive of each other, really giving, great compliments, feedback on music, and then just, following each other on all the socials and listening to each other's work. I'm so grateful to Tom and really everybody in the community.
Yeah, it's very inspiring, isn't it, to connect up with so many other musicians whose work is all totally different. You can't even say ABR is to do with one genre of music, because it's all genres of music, and it means that it really expands you to listen to so many different tracks that people share and that Tom puts out. So it's very exciting. So how did Grey Star Ghost come about?
Yeah, so my musical journey has been fascinating. I'll try to give you the shortened version, but I was a self-taught guitarist about the age 13 or 14, along with a couple of my friends. I had a really good friend in middle school, high school, that also taught himself guitar, and we played a lot together. And then probably about our junior year of high school, we decided, hey, we should be in a band together. And so we grabbed some other people, and we had a band at that time called Slow Motion Daydream. And I wrote most of the songs for it. We also did covers. We played a lot of local concert shows in our community, and at our high school, we performed various events and things. And it was great. It was really a lot of fun. But then when we all graduated from high school, we kind of went our separate ways. And I thought that was, being in a band was kind of a high school thing. I was going to put that aside and focus on academics in college, and then starting my adult life. And I, would play music sporadically at that point, and would write songs here and there occasionally. But it wasn't until years later, several years later, after all that I, went through some challenges in life, as adults, young adults often do. Really just tragedy for one thing, and then changing perspective of how I thought about the world and how I, saw things. And I think going through all that, I had a real need to create in music again. I had been writing different articles and poetry. I've always got some kind of creative pursuit, but I really felt this need to get out these experiences through music. And so I started writing more consistently, and I hooked back up with my friend from high school and middle school that played guitar as well. He moved to the same town that I was in, again, fortuitously, we, met up again, and we decided, hey, let's do this again. We loved being in a band together the first time. Let's be in a band together again. And so we got a couple of friends together, and then that became Gray Star Ghost. And so, it's always been a band with friends that we hang out with outside of performing together. And so it's also great to do that creative pursuit together. So, it's been an interesting journey for me, but I think now, it's been probably over 3.5 years or so since Gray Star Ghost started, and I'm keeping it going. And now it's kind of like, I think I'm going to stick with this. I learned from the past that when I kind of went away from doing music really often, and it being a part of my daily life and that creative outlet, I missed it, and I needed it again. And so now that I've learned that this is gonna stick, I think.
Brilliant. I'm really glad to hear that.
Yeah.
But I think it is hard, once you've been playing music, when you've really got into music, it's very hard to move away from it. I think it becomes almost like an essential need in you, that you have to be able to play, and with songwriting, you have to be able to keep writing. I know I started playing guitar, taught myself when I was 16, purely because I was writing so many songs, I needed to be able to figure out how to play them. And it can kind of take over. So I'm really happy to hear that you're sticking with it. I mean, you've got a beautiful voice. It reminds me of kind of velvet and chocolate. It's a really kind of soothing, beautiful voice. I mean, you really pump the volume out on some of your songs as well. But it's very unusual, and it's quite hypnotic to listen to as well. Is it your sister who's your female backing singer, or is that somebody else?
I've actually had a couple. So the first album, Silence Found, was a good friend named Christine. And she was a vocal performance major in college. And is a brilliant natural singer. And, she also plays violin and some other instruments. And when we got back together as a band, I would sing my melodies, and she would just kind of jump in with harmonies and other counterpoint type lines that were really great. She'd come up with all that while we were practicing. And then after I moved to Albuquerque on the Earth Still Moves album, my wife, Olivia, actually is the backup singer on that one.
Oh.
And that kind of came about. I never asked her to do that or anything. I would just practice my songs, and sometimes she would just kind of walk in the room singing a harmony with me. And so I thought, you know what, we should record that. That sounds good. It adds a great layer. So it's been a couple different ones, but a good friend, and then my wife. So.
That's beautiful. Yeah, because the vocals work so beautifully together, your voice and the backing vocals as well. Of course, there's a lot of instruments in your tracks as well. So I wanted to ask you, how many instruments do you play? Because you play several, don't you?
Yeah, I play guitar primarily, mostly rhythm, but I can pull out a lead part if I practice and I need to. I play keyboard, piano. Trumpet, I play. There's a song on Earth Still Moves where I play trumpet. I can play bass, guitar when needed, and that's probably the main ones. Every now and then, in a studio situation, especially, there will be an instrument lying around, a glockenspiel or something like that. That I'll kind of go, I wonder if there's a part that'll work. Theremin, different things like that, and so I can kind of pick up things and sort of mess around and come up with a part at times. But on Earth Still Moves, I played most of it myself. Had a couple parts here and there that were helped by other people. But I always like to say I'm okay at several instruments, but there are a lot of people that are a lot better at each one than I am. So I love collaborating with others and being in a band, and especially in the studio, having those ideas and other people bringing what they can do to the instrumentation. That's what I would really like to do going forward. So I play a handful of instruments, pretty decently, I guess, and I'm able to pull it off when I need to. But they're definitely a lot better musicians on each individual thing than I am. So I love having the help as well.
Yeah, I think we could always say that, couldn't we? Though, I mean, even the real virtuoso musicians that I know still say, "Well, I could be better. There are other people who are better," and it's a very kind of personal thing, isn't it? And but no, I mean, all of the tracks and the instrumentals within the tracks sound absolutely amazing on both your albums. And I love how what you've done, I think you did it even more in Silence, the Silence Found album, was there's little short kind of 1 minute or even less introductory instrumentals that kind of lead you in, and then it comes into the song. And there's a real kind of nature feel around those as well. There's sea sounds, it kind of feels as if you're out in nature when you're listening to it, which was something that, really made me think when I was listening again this morning about so many natural sounds. And you find that nature's a big influence for you in what you write.
Yeah, definitely. Especially moving here to New Mexico. A lot of people don't really know how beautiful it is here. It's really an underrated place for its beauty. I can see a mountain range from my front door. There are tons of mature trees in my neighborhood, and I'll ride my bike through town, and everybody's yard just has, their own landscape to it that they've put natural plants in, and the sunsets here are really, really pretty. I'm not sure the science behind what makes them so pretty, but they are. And sunrise as well. Sometimes there's so many vibrant colors that, moving here, I really started to hear these sounds and see these things that I just felt like were consistent with the music that I wanted to make. And so I had a little field recorder that I borrowed from somebody. And when the wind was blowing especially hard through the leaves and the trees, I would go out and record that. When it was raining sometimes, there's thunder, I would go out and record that. And just, different kind of nature sounds that I thought, could work well and work into the music that I was writing. And those transition tracks that you're talking about, I didn't, plan on that initially with this latest album, Earth Still Moves. I just had a handful of songs that I thought I was going to make an EP with. And then it started to feel like these sounds I was hearing in nature could really go well with this song or that song, or serve as an introduction or even an outro. And then in doing that, the whole thing became a little bit more conceptual, a little bit longer for one thing. And it actually turned into a full album by the time stamp and the number of tracks, according to digital distribution. And so what originally was an EP, in my mind, with all those added transition tracks with the nature sounds and things, it became a full album, which was pretty cool. I didn't set out to do another album necessarily, but it worked out like that with Earth Still Moves.
Oh, well, it sounds absolutely amazing. And there's quite a kind of magical feel to that as well, which I really love. So would you say that moving to Albuquerque has kind of influenced your music, the way that you write and the way that you're playing?
Yeah, definitely it has. I would say with Silence Found, especially lyrically, it was very personal. And my friends brought a lot to the table in terms of the instrumentation, how the music came together. But really the album, the context of it was almost like a personal open journal for me. I had, like I mentioned earlier, I'd gone through some difficulties and was writing about that. putting it to music, and it all kind of came together for Silence Found. And when that album was finished and it had been out for a little while, I kind of felt like I was really proud of it, and I kind of also felt like I said what I needed to say about the experiences that I had, and that was all in Texas. And then we moved in the middle of the pandemic in 2020 to Albuquerque, New Mexico. My wife got a job at the university here teaching in Albuquerque, and coming here, I started to have a little bit more broad of a view on what I could do with the music lyrically, especially. And so I started writing what became Earth Still Moves a little bit more outwardly. It wasn't quite as internal, personally introspective. It was more observational of what I was seeing moving here, and just the experience of having a big life change like that, moving out of state, kind of led me to look at things a little bit bigger and in perspective, and start to write about things that were outside of me, but I obviously have the personal influence in how I'm seeing it. But it was really a great songwriting exercise, I would say, to take it from the personal to the outward observational. So that's what became Earth Still Moves, which I don't think would have been written had we not moved here. A lot of the lyrics of the song are about things that I was seeing here in nature and in the history of the culture here. There's a really big indigenous, Native American population here, and there are all kinds of landmarks of different ruins from 1,000+ years ago that really impacted the way I was seeing things, and then translated into some of the lyrics and the thoughts behind songs being here.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
So with your songs, do you have a method for songwriting, or do songs just come to you? It's something that I'm always very curious about as a songwriter myself. And most of the people I've spoken to find that songs just appear in their heads, or they're playing around on the guitar and it just appears. But I do know other songwriters, one of whom I've worked with on the Echoes album with the Tenzin Band, who will sit every day and write, and see what songs emerge from that. So how do your songs come about?
Yeah, it's a great question, and different songs come about in different ways. But I would say that a full song rarely comes to me. Just comes to me. It's often like a tiny seed of an idea that I might have. I'll see something or think about something, and I'll go, I think that would be a good topic for a song, just as far as this song, I want it to be about, fill in the blank. So I'll often start there, just kind of with a topic in mind of something I've experienced. And then I'll play around on the guitar typically, and find a chord progression that I might like that seems to fit with the topic that I have in mind. And then lyrics rarely just come to me easily. There's one song on Silence Found, So Far Away, that it's an 8+ minute long song. That one was the exception, where the reason why it's 8+ minutes is because lyrics were just kind of coming out of me. And I wrote that whole song in about 10-15 minutes. But that's really the exception. That's pretty rare. I often have to kind of sweat it out on the lyrics. So I would definitely say it doesn't just come to me. There's a lot of work that goes into it. But the ideas for songs often will kind of pop into my head based on something I've seen, and so I'll jot down not a specific lyric or anything like that, but just an idea of what a song could be about, the story, and then I'll go and do the work of figuring out the chords that will work with it, the lyrics, the melody, other parts that might go well with what I'm trying to do. But I definitely think, one constant, even though they kind of come about differently with each song, one constant is that I've found for me that I can't just wait for inspiration to strike. If I did that, I wouldn't have much material. I've got to, sit down and put in the work, and sometimes sweat it out. Sometimes it comes quickly. Other times I'll do, 5, 6 iterations of something before I have found how it's going to work. But I think, you've got to kind of initiate the inspiration. For me, at least. Other people, they might just be inspired and get a whole song out of them in a couple minutes. I don't know, but it doesn't work as well like that for me. I've really got to sit down and put pencil to paper and figure out the music. But yeah, they come about a little differently, each one. It just kind of depends, but that's a constant for me, is not waiting on inspiration to strike.
Yeah, yeah. So is that the advice that you'd give to anybody who is wanting to write their own songs?
Yeah, definitely. I think any creative pursuit, really, I think it's rare that the inspiration can just strike and you've got your material and you do it. I think for most people, and definitely me, it takes, kind of initiating the inspiration, engaging in whatever the medium is that you're doing. If it's songwriting, painting, writing a poem, an article, anything like that. I think you, by sitting down and doing it, are creating the inspiration. And then it's kind of a back and forth. You sort of listen to what the world is telling you, the universe is telling you, and then you also put it down in the way you might articulate it or show it visually, whatever it might be. So then it becomes a circular type thing with the inspiration and then the work, and the inspiration and the work.
Yes.
But I've always had to initiate it for sure.
Right. Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? And do you find that the more you're creating, the more that seems to kind of open up the channels for creating, so that it kind of even more comes on from that?
Yeah, definitely. I have these windows of time, often a season of time, where I'll write a lot of songs because it just sort of seems to be flowing, and writing a song begets writing another song, et cetera. And then when I get to a certain point, often I'll kind of pause on writing and practice and figure out what other parts I might want to have in a song. And so then I'll go through a time where it's refining what I've written. And then I'll hit another time of creativity and write and write and write, and then do the whole thing again, where I stop and figure out, okay, I've written a lot of songs here. What do I want to do with them, really, arrangement wise and refining and things like that. So it kind of, goes back and forth in different seasons.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, it's fascinating. Have you had any particular influences?
Yeah,
Music.
definitely. There's a lot, but I would say a few constant ones. A big one for me is Elliot Smith. He was a guy in the States. He grew up in Texas, actually, for a while, then moved to Oregon and then Los Angeles. And I didn't discover him, unfortunately, till after his death. He died, I think, in 2003. And he was pretty young, maybe 33 years old. And I discovered him some years after that. And it just hit me deep. His music, lyrically and musically, it all, went really well together. And hearing someone like that was so inspiring. And he also played on his albums most of the parts as well, a lot better than I could. But he's inspired other artists more recently that I've gotten into a lot, that I would also consider inspirations, like Phoebe Bridgers is one who I know she's heavily influenced by Elliot Smith, and then she in turn has influenced me. There's others like that as well. Sufjan Stevens is a big influence to me in songwriting and vocally, and a lot of his atmospheric type sounds that he does. And then early on, I was a lot younger and kind of just learning how to play. Counting Crows were a big influence for me, and they definitely come through in the arrangements a lot. They're pretty complex instrumentally, often, and I like to do that too. And my friend that I mentioned, Blake is his name, who plays guitar as well. Counting Crows are a huge influence on him. So the two of us together, creating and coming up with ideas with that influence, it definitely comes through. But in different times, I'll really get into certain artists and they'll impact a song. Lately, there's been some with Dashboard Confessional. They just released an album maybe a month or so ago that I've listened to a ton. It's great, and that's come through in some more recent things I've written. Death Cab for Cutie was an inspiration or an influence for Earth Still Moves, part of it. There's the Shins, which were from here in Albuquerque. And before I ever moved here, I was really into them. So there's a lot. It's, just it kind of depends on who I'm listening to, when, and then if I'm also at the same time that I'm listening to someone in that creative zone or I'm writing a lot, then that influence can come. But I used to, when I was younger, feel like having an influence was almost cheating in a way. Like I wasn't creating from nothing. I was creating from someone else and doing my own thing with it. And then after a while, talking to other people, I learned that like most people do that. We all have to have something to look toward, something to inspire us. And it made me feel better about it, because I often would go like, after I wrote a song, like, well, I just wrote a song, but I wouldn't have written it without hearing this other song. Is that okay? I learned from other artists that yes, it's absolutely okay.
Absolutely, yes. And the funny thing is that very often, even though you're influenced, say, at a certain point by one particular song or musician, what you're writing isn't the same as what they've been playing, performing.
Yeah.
It's just that it kind of gives that energy, impetus, really, for creating in some way, doesn't it? That feeling of connection that you have. So it's something I find really, really interesting.
Yeah, definitely. There are a lot of songs by other artists that I listen to and go, man, I really wish I had written that, because it's so good. I just love it so much. But then I'll write my own thing, and maybe someday, or maybe it's already happened, I don't know about it, someone will think that about my songs. I don't know.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I'm sure that they do already. I think We Are Not to Blame, when I heard that, I wish I'd written that song.
Oh, thank you.
So yeah, because I love all of your songs, but I really love that one. And I love how you sing it, brown and green outlive us all, which is what got me thinking, along with the different effects from nature sounds, how nature must influence you in some way. But yeah, that's a really powerful song, I think.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I was looking out of my backyard here in Albuquerque when I wrote most of that. And when I lived in Texas, there were a lot of great things about where I lived in Texas. I liked the community a lot that I lived in. There was a great music community there, college town. So I had that kind of creative, artistic vibe. But it was not really a very pretty place, nature-wise. Is really a developed urban, suburban kind of city area. Moving here was in some ways the opposite of that. I've mentioned the mountains, and in the yard that we moved into, it's not a grassy yard. It's all rocks and a garden area and these really mature trees. And seeing that every day, and then also in my neighborhood and what other neighbors have done with their landscaping, it really did, make me think more about the role of nature in our lives. And part of that song in particular, "We Are Not to Blame," is it, I believed in climate change before moving here, but seeing what we could lose if we don't do something really became salient here. Because the beauty here is just so amazing. The thought of, man, if this ever went away, I just, I can't take it,
Yeah.
And so that, looking out of my yard and seeing all that and thinking about climate change and things like that really inspired "We Are Not to Blame." And the brown and green, outliving us all, was me looking at a tree in my backyard and going, that tree is a massive tree in my yard. And I don't know how old it is, but it was definitely here before I was, and it's going to, I think, be here long after I'm not. So that really, inspired that.
Oh, that's wonderful. And what's your plans for the future? Are you planning any live gigs? And do you have another album coming?
Yeah, so I've been playing some live solo type things here lately. I try to do something at least once a week, maybe every couple weeks. But my plans are to get a band together again here in Albuquerque. I had bands in the past that I've mentioned, and then Earth Still Moves was largely me playing the different parts. But I would really like to get a band again, because as I mentioned, other people can play certain things a lot better than me. And I also just love that creative collaboration that you do with people. I've found that other people will come up with ideas that I would never have thought of that I really like. And they'll bring, their own influences into things that when you combine multiple people's influences and their creative thoughts, it can really become something special. So it's been a little challenging to know when's the right time to reach out to people with the pandemic and all, but I think now is the time. And so I've been reaching out to people, getting more connected in the music community here, and it's a great music community here in Albuquerque. I've got some people that are interested. Most of the people that I've met through the music community here are all already in 2, 3, 4 bands, some of them. So it's people like to be in multiple projects at once, and so it's been challenging to find people with the time to add one more, that being me. But I've got some interest and some people that definitely want to collaborate and play together, and so my plans are to be in a band again, and it to be Gray Star Ghost. I like the idea of building on what we do every album that I might release, building on the previous ones. So I want to keep that artist name going, and then I've got the bones of at least 2 more albums written.
Wow.
There's one in particular that is a little bit more fully fleshed out in my head, at least, that I've got multiple parts written for, and I've got all the songs and a sequence for them in mind. And then a few of those funny intro, outro type tracks into them that I hope makes it flow together. So once I do get, other people to collaborate, then, after we practice and hopefully play some shows, then I'd like to, get us ready to go back in the studio and record that album, because I think it could be a really good one. And it's in my head, it's a little more heavy than things I've done in the past. I would say consistent still, but a little more electric guitar driven. So it'll be I think a progression, not a complete departure by any means, but a progression in the music from what I've done previously. So I'm excited about that for sure. I've just got to get some people together and work on it together and collaborate.
Oh, I'm excited to hear what comes out of this then, Jacob. Thank you. You said that you'd be willing to play one of your songs for us. Is that still okay? I would love that. Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you.
Let me grab my guitar. It's over here.
Yeah, I'll let you get organized for that.
Angle a little
what
bit.
I will do is view it so that people can just look at you rather than me.
Oh,
there
sure.
we go.
Step back a little. And in this song, I put on Earth Still Moves, and it's called Highlight of the Day. And it's one that really, when I wrote it, all I had were acoustic guitar part and lyrics, vocal melody. And I got in the studio with some friends, and we really put a lot of different pieces to it, some keyboard parts, some drum parts, these reverse string sounds that were done with some studio technology that really brought it together in a way that I hadn't quite envisioned going into the studio. But then coming out, it kind of became maybe my favorite song from the album. And that could change, next month what my favorite might be. But I've gotten some nice comments from other people about this song in particular, and so I thought I'd play that one if you don't mind.
Oh, thank you. Fabulous.
Let me get one more sip of tea.
Mm-hmm.
So, as you mentioned, it's morning here for me.
It's early for you, yes, to be playing.
And this was one of those songs that did not come easily. I probably had 4 or 5 iterations of it, different time signatures, different melodic lines before I finally went, okay, I think I'll keep this one. I was close to actually abandoning it at one point because it just wasn't coming together in a way that felt good. And I just kind of kept at it. I changed the time signature for one thing to a 3/4 beat. And somehow doing that, I went, okay, I think this might actually end up being a keeper. So definitely did not just come to me.
Yes, I'm glad it did.
But this is highlight of the day.
Thank you.
Driveway just to check the mail. Highlight of the day. Surely we won't fail. How much do we care? What will be the price? Welcome to the lost year of all we never were. Have we hit the bottom? Can we go further? Where is the bright side? Can't believe our eyes. Welcome to the lost year, fading with daylight. News comes from afar, and we can't go near. Is it really that hard? Can you just stay here? What are your eyes when it's someone else's life? Years going by, this one a dark night. Welcome to the lost year of all we never were. Have we hit the bottom? Can we go further? Where is the bright side? Can't believe our eyes. Welcome
Oh, that is beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you.
Love it. Well, thank you very, very much for joining me today. Everybody, this is Jacob Tucker of Grey Star Ghost. Please go on all of the streaming places and look for him, look for Grey Star Ghost, and have a listen to all of his music, because it's absolutely beautiful, and you'll be very glad that you did. So thank you, Jacob, for joining me.
Lisa. And before we go, I just also want to say congrats on Echoes. It's a fantastic album. So while you're at it, listen to Lisa's album Echoes. It's a really coherent album from top to bottom. It's almost like a rock opera in a way. There's so many great songs on it, and they all flow together so well. So great work on that. I'm gonna listen to it again and again. It's one that when I first heard it, I went, this is something I'm going to come back to over and over again, because it's really fantastic.
Oh wow, thank you so much. Yes, I wrote it kind of as a whole sequence of songs, so it is like a rock opera. I just got the idea for this story, and all of the songs fell into place for the story, so that really means a lot to me. Thank you so much, Jacob.
Well, thank you.
Thank you everybody for joining us.